Hello everyone and welcome back to this week's video, and today we're going to see about another character for this Kidscape study group videos this week. So today, thanking the Lord through our Saviour Jesus Christ, we're going to look at the character Elisha. So at first, this might seem as the character that we have talked about before, Elijah, but as we know, they have similar names, like I said, Elisha, Elijah, but they're different characters. That's why we have two different videos for them, of course. So today, let's talk about Elisha, okay? And Elisha was actually closely related to Elijah and his story as well, because he was the successor of Elijah, we can say. But we need to understand they had a very different way of their actions we see. Because Elijah was doing his ministry towards God, his ministry, I should say, in a much bigger picture compared to Elisha, you see. So it can get a bit confusing at times when saying the names. But like I was saying, he was doing his ministry in a very much bigger picture compared to Elisha, because he was doing it towards the king, and he was doing it to the whole of Israel in a whole land-like approach, his ministry. However, his successor, Elisha, was doing the ministry more to individuals, and to each specific individual, his actions are shown. And we can see one of his actions that he had done to an individual was protecting a widow from a situation where she was suffering in poverty and debt. And to support her, he increased the oil in the area she was living, providing her support in that position. So now we see Elisha as a character is a very peculiar and interesting character we can look about. So today, let us talk about this character and why he is mentioned as a faithful character in the Bible. So let us look. So the first time Elisha as a character is mentioned itself is in the 1 Kings chapter 19. 1 Kings chapter 19, the 16th verse, and it says, "Also anoint Jehu, son of Nimshi, king Israel, and anoint Elisha." So he's first talking about the king in this verse, but that's not necessary for us. But then it says, "And anoint Elisha, son of Shaphath, from Abel Meholah, to succeed you as prophet." So God is talking to Elijah in this specific verse, we see. So once we understand that this verse obviously indicates Elisha was to be prophet. So Elisha actually served as prophet for 60 years for Israel, we see. And he's even referred to once in the New Testament under the name Eliseus in the Luke chapter. And here Jesus is mentioning Elisha to one of Elisha's miracles that he had done, which had cured, we see, a Naaman leper. Those of you who might know about lepers, was a person who had been infected by the leprosy disease, which was an uncurable disease back in the periods of that time, where it was seen as uncurable and to a certain death. But in this situation, Elisha has done a miracle to cure it. That's why it was seen as a miracle, of course. And then we see, now more towards Elisha's background, that Elisha was the son of Shaphath, like we said in the verse. And his name means God, his salvation. And we could certainly see throughout the Bible, where Elisha is mentioned, God did protect Elisha throughout his long period of service as a prophet, and used him in connections with many miracles, and even raising people from the dead. So after Elijah's first contact with Elisha, we hear nothing more of Elisha until very close to the end of his master's life. So we can see that Elisha is a very much underrated character, or how do I put it, under the radar character, I should say, in the Bible, as he's not mentioned too frequently in the Bible, as we see, as only a whole chapter after he's only mentioned once to be the prophet, he is mentioned once again. But each time he is mentioned in the Bible, he is showing that faithfulness. Like in the verses we're going to read now, 2 Kings, we can see, 2nd chapter, the first 6 verses, we're going to see about the beautiful things about Elisha and what he has done, we see. So let us read. So When the Lord was about to take Elijah up to heaven in a whirlwind, Elijah and Elisha were on their way from Gilgal. Elijah said to Elisha, "Stay here, the Lord has sent me to Bethel." But Elisha said, "As surely as the Lord lives and as you live, I will not leave you," he said. So they went down to Bethel. The company of the prophets at Bethel came out to Elisha and asked, "Do you know that the Lord is going to take your master from you today?" And then Elisha replied, saying, "Yes, I know," Elisha replied, "so be quiet." Then Elijah said to him, "Stay here, Elisha." Then, "Stay here, Elisha. The Lord has sent me to Jericho." And he replied, "As surely as the Lord lives and as you live, I will not leave you." So they went to Jericho. The company of the prophets at Jericho went up to Elisha and asked him, "Do you know that the Lord is going to take your master from you today?" And then he says, "Yes, I know," he replied, "so be quiet." Then Elijah said to him, "Stay here. The Lord has sent me to Jordan." And he replied, "As surely as the Lord lives," he says, "I will not leave you." So the two of them walked on. So what a beautiful real reflection, I should say, of Elisha's true humanity we see. Because Elijah had thrown his mantle upon Elisha after so long of time. He was anointed to be prophet, you see. Yet he willingly filled the less honorable position before this time to be a servant of Elijah. And not just for a few days, but for a number of years he was the servant of Elijah as well. And here we see Elisha's great devotion to the senior prophet is reflected throughout his life, even when Elisha knows that he is most likely to be the next prophet. And everyone is talking of Elijah's departing from this world. Elisha is showing that just amount of devotion and faith towards Elijah that he would on the first day he met Elijah in first contact. And he shows that, and as it's repeated, the same verses about 3 times in the first 6 verses, which is showing the repetition that the faithfulness that Elisha is showing, we see. Here also is an objective lesson we also have to understand, which all the Lord's people might well take to heart. We have to understand. Because the Lord's consecrated people have always had a battle against the spirit world, we should say. Because the influences of the world have varied in detail throughout the ages, because our influences, our interests, our needs throughout ages as life has developed, it has changed our influences. Today, we see one aspect we have to understand. Today, one aspect of the world spirit is the glorification of success and doing well in life. And we see it is appealing to the natural mind, yet should not be permitted to induce Christians to be growth, to be higher than other people, because especially in church, just because you have that success in yourself, which I should say, sorry for that mumble at that there, but we see this is relatively similar to what Elisha had. He was in that position where Elisha was quite happy and he was waiting for the Lord's due time for the promotion to act the service of a prophet, we see, because he waited for a number of years to become prophet. It was prophesied that he was to become the next prophet after Elijah, but the patience, the faithfulness that he shows to Elijah till the day he leaves is the same as the first day he was the servant of Elijah, we see, showing how that glorification of success had not influenced Elisha whatsoever throughout his journey with Elijah. So we see, reaching Jordan, after this point, Elijah smote the waters of the rivers with his mantle. And then, the waters parted and the two crossed on dry ground, we see, onto the other side, we see. So let's continue that story first, actually. So we're going to read a few more verses. So like I carried on, we're going to carry on reading where it says, So Elijah took his cloak and rolled it up and struck the water with it. The water divided to the right, it says. Water divided to the right and to the left, and the two of them crossed the dry ground. When they crossed, Elijah said to Elisha, "Tell me, what can I do for you before I am taken from you? Let me inherit a double portion of your spirit," he said. Elisha replied, he said, "You have asked a difficult thing," Elijah said. "Yet if you have seen me when I am taken from you, it will be yours. Otherwise, it will not," he's saying. So this request, once again, in the last few verses, also shows his intention of his master's blessing is all that is required for him and nothing else. So we can see he wants to continue exactly what Elijah had done in his time as the prophet. The same thing, because he's asking for that blessing, showing once again to that faithfulness he is showing throughout that period of his life. So that is all for this week's video, and I'll see you next week. Bye.